Hey folks, Professor G here with another podcast on human sexuality. I finally got my podcast switched over to YouTube. I still post them the same place because it distributes to a few other places like Apple and some other places. But YouTube is going to be my main place to host my podcast because it's free and I like free. But it occurred to me to explain, why do I start all my podcasts with hello, folks? So, first of all, folks doesn't designate gender. I hate when I moved to California, and I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting in a room and they say, "Hey, guys." And I'm looking down going, wait, I'm not a guy. Are they not talking to me? I don't, nope, not a guy. I'm a gal, not a guy. But occasionally you'll find somebody that'll say guys and gals, but not usually. It's usually, hey guys. I don't like that. It designates gender, just like saying men and girls instead of men and women, boys and girls. Women are often called girls. It's a put down, whether you realize it or not. We got to stop doing that. Need to start correcting people. Excuse me, not a girl. I'm a woman. She's not a girl. She's a woman. She's a young woman, but she's still a woman. She's not a girl. Um, but anyway, I use folks because that's everybody. Doesn't designate gender. Just like the wonderful expression from the South, y'all. When I say y'all, I'm not designating any gender. It's an abbreviation for you all of you. A lot of people forget that you is actually plural. Okay, not going to have an English lesson here, but that's why I say folks, and that's why I continue to use y'all. These terms don't designate gender. But anyway, let's get started. What were we going to talk about today? Well, I want to get into the kinky stuff, but I'm kind of going to have an introduction to it first. So I have re released my lecture that I made for my college students in the human sexuality class on that chapter was called Varieties of Sexual Expression, and it covers the paraphilias. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into that, and again, feel free to watch the entire lesson. It's an hour and 22 minutes. My lessons were usually an hour and a half, so that's about right. Uh, and you can skip the parts if you're not interested in the theories of how people developed or the treatments, and there's lots of stuff you can skip and just listen to the parts that you're interested in. I will tell you that that is an old lesson. And like I always say, one of the reasons I love science is it's always improving and always changing. So, could be some old stuff in there that is no longer applicable. I'm not sure about the one that talks about transvestitism being a fetish. I'm not sure if that would still qualify. That could be an example of something that we no longer say that. But anyway, before we get into the fun, kinky stuff, I identify as a kinky person. And it happens to be one of my favorite questions to ask people when you're out and just having conversations. And somehow or another, I always manage to get the conversation around to sex. Most people, not all, a lot of people are very uncomfortable talking about sex or being around people who talk about sex. I don't usually hang out with those people. They're just not my people. So, but a lot of older people think, yeah, I've left that behind, which, by the way, is not true. I have 70 to 80-year-old friends that are still having active sex lives, which, some of you might go, ooh, old people having sex. Well, one day, if you're lucky, you'll get to be old too. And I hope you have an active sex life even when you're older. But anyway, so one of my favorite things to ask people is, what's your kink? because, and it could be people I'm interested in dating and hooking up with or whatever. I might be asking for personal reasons. Sometimes I'm just asking for conversational reasons. My kids will tell you, I interview people. I love to talk to people, but it almost always turns into an interview. And especially if they're slightly not mainstream, those are my people. That's who I'm interested in because they're never boring. And so I say, what is your kink? Well, if somebody goes, oh, I don't know, having sex and with, in a different position or something, well, then I know they're not really kinky people, right? They're having trouble finding something that would classify as kinky, and that's okay. You can be a non kinky person. Doesn't mean you're not having a fun, great sex life. That's totally okay. Different strokes for different folks. But if you're talking to somebody who's a kinky person, you say, what's your kink? Well, I like being tied up and flogged and pinched and poked and so you're a masochist and right, find out what their kink is. But when I'm looking for kinky people, I've found that's a great way to eliminate people. Because if I say, what is your kink? And they can't think of anything, or what they come up with is extremely mild, then I go, okay, that's cool, and move on and talk to somebody else if you're looking for somebody kinky. And why would you be looking for somebody kinky? Because maybe you've discovered you're a kinky person. And so you want to find other kinky people to hang out with. I was very fortunate because when I got into the kinky community, I was living down in San Diego, and there was a wonderful kink community down there, just fabulous. All about educating people, supporting people, helping you on your journey. It wasn't just people getting together and wanting to beat each other. uh, People who are not kinky people and haven't been in that community often do not understand it. We actually used to give educational classes to police officers. If they went to a house because a neighbor called and heard somebody screaming and yelling, and the cops open the door and this person's tied up and this other person's beating them, they could be arrested. We had to teach them, if this is consensual, that's just their playtime. You interrupted. And so we've tried to educate a lot of different people. Doctors, if you've ever had a session where and you end up with bruises and scrapes and stuff all over your body from your play, uh, and then you have to go to the doctor, well, they might put it in your medical record, this person's being abused by somebody. So you have to teach them, you have to educate people. Nope, this is consensual. I'm proud of my marks. And again, we'll get into that in more detail later. One of the reasons I decided to discuss the um, paraphilias and get into the kinky stuff, like as I said, that's my community. That's I identify. So it's fun for me to talk about, obviously. But the reason I was bringing it up to the general audience, my podcast audience, is because um, I was talking to somebody about monogamy. And I said, monogamy can get monotonous. Uh, we a lot of times will put a lot of people who are against monogamy say monogamy equals monotony, which is boring. It doesn't have to. So, monogamy, if that's important to you to be monogamous, you can have great sex. It doesn't have to get boring, but it can very easily. So you have to work at it to keep it from getting boring, which leads me to the kinky stuff. A lot of people kind of go and say, hey, to keep things fresh and hot and passionate and exciting and all that, we need to bring some kink into our life. So, very often in the kink community, new people who come in, that's why, especially when they come in as couples, we're looking for something to spice up our sex life. because as hard as it is to admit, sex can get boring. If you're with the same person and you both learn each other's things, what are the things that turn you on? And I discovered this, so I can't remember how much of my past I've talked about. I got pregnant when I was 16 and had to get married, and I didn't. My family and their church and all that said I had to get married. Um, but anyway, and so I did. But we were young, and of course, having kids right away, it's kind of hard on adult sex life. But you can get creative. Kids need to take naps. That's when you squeeze your time in. But even though we were in our, I was in my early, I'm not even sure I was 20 yet, 19. I got 16, 17. Yeah. Um, Probably 19 years old and stuff. We're both young. We've just gotten together and sex started getting boring already. And I was like, really? I never expected this. Again, I wasn't a sex educator yet. So I learned a lot just in life, and then learned once I got into the academic programs. Here's what I mean by boring. It still feels good, but it's very predictable. There's no passion. There's no, oh, what's going to happen next? You know exactly what's going to happen next because it gets routine. So, this is my demonstration of it to kind of simplify it. So you get used to the person. Okay, kiss, kiss, tweak the nipples a few times, stimulate the clitoris, insert your penis, and start thrusting. And that's exactly what happens every time we had sex. Kiss, kiss, tweak, tweak, stimulate, insert, thrust, thrust. Kiss, kiss, tweak, tweak. Same thing. That's why it gets boring. It gets routine. It gets predictable. It's less passionate. By the way, it's one of the reasons married couples, one of the reasons, not all of them, married couples started doing the date night. Let's have date nights. It was to bring back some passion, some interest, rediscover what you liked about the person in the first place. Have a date night. Hopefully, date night would lead to date sex. And maybe you didn't make it home. Maybe you ended up doing it in the car. Maybe you ended up doing it in an alley. And some people are going, oh, that's gross. Yeah, but it's passionate. It's exciting. It's interesting. There's all kinds of fun things. I've had a few times with my husband, with my partner, and we got caught. Public sex. I think we were parking, and the police officers were trying to shine their flashlights on so they could see me. He's trying to block me so they couldn't see me. It was very cute. But anyway, it was fun. So, and we're like, we're married. We're trying to, okay, that's fine, but, you know, y'all finish up and go do your thing, whatever. We were old enough. We were married. They didn't really care, but it made a great story. It was really fun. You got to bring the passion back. Unexpected. The problem is, as people live together, they get to know each other too well in some ways, or maybe they don't get to know each other at all. They don't like each other and they never really developed any intimacy. And so, yeah, it's really hard to keep the interest and the passion going. A lot of times, I sadly know a lot of people that soon after they got married, one of the partners immediately started cheating. It's not always about sex when somebody cheats, by the way. A lot of times they're looking for something that's missing in their current relationship. But it helps if you keep it hot, kinky, fun, passionate, but you have to work at it because it gets routine. It's like, well, I know they like this, I know they like that, and I do that, which makes you wonder, what are people's goals in sex? It's a little bit like the question I asked previously, why have sex? I used to write on the board all the different reasons and stuff. It's a little bit like that. But I'm asking, when we discuss in general why people have sex, you can shout out reasons that maybe you've never done it for that reason, but you know other people have, right? It's kind of a general reasons why people have sex. And leads to a fascinating discussion as well. But why do you have sex, as far as, is a little different from what is your goal in sex? So forget whatever your reasons were for having it. What's your goal in that session for sex? Typically, most men, the goal is orgasm. They just want to come. And so I always talk a lot about learn to enjoy the journey, especially for men. Because if you don't enjoy the journey, one, it's over much too quickly. Um, and then you have your orgasm. And usually, for most men, once they get a tiny bit older, they're done. There's that refractory period that nothing's going to happen for a little while. And that period gets longer and longer as men get older. So when you're young, it might be 15 minutes. Um, and I remember the kid's daddy said the first time we were having sex in a bed instead of in a parked car. And he said, "Oh, that was great. Can we do it again?" And he's like, "Yeah, let me go have a Coke." I don't know what he thought having a Coke was going to help, but it gave him a break for a few minutes. And then we went back at it. That's when you're young. When you get older, it's like, well, maybe later tonight. And it's maybe tomorrow, maybe in a few days. That period can get longer. Doesn't always, but it certainly can. So, what is your goal in sex? If your goal is just to have an orgasm, that's like you're not enjoying the journey. You're focused on just the destination, and you get there way too quick, and then it's over, and you missed all the fun part. So, try to get men. One of my things I always used to say was, men need to think more when it comes to sex. Women need to think less. It's trying to get the women to focus, get out of their heads, get more into just the sensations and how good it feels. We want men to get into their heads a little more so that they can last longer and enjoy the journey. So you want to find out what's somebody's goal. If your goal is just to hurry up and get to the orgasm, I say, why don't you go in your room and masturbate? Just want to have an orgasm. You're not really wanting to spend time with another person, getting to know their body, getting to explore their body. Again, once I reclaimed Sundays and got over the going to church thing, Sundays were sex days. And it's like, hey, it's Sunday. Let's get in bed and stay in bed and watch porn and fool around and get something to eat and then watch some more porn and fool around. And yeah, Sundays became sex days. And it's a wonderful experience to spend relaxed time with someone playing around with sex. Just, again, the goal is not just to have a quick orgasm. How's it feel if I do it this way or in this position or this position? We used to get the Joy of Sex out, the book, when it came out, and work through all the different positions. Some of them are absolutely hilarious. And it's great to laugh during sex, to be able to laugh and have a good time. That's awesome. But try all kinds of different positions. Um, that keeps it from getting boring. And you might discover different things, explore each other's bodies. Oh, does that drive you insane when I lick the inside crease, the opposite side of your elbow? So where your arm bends, that little crease, Any place in your body that there's a bend, it's super sensitive. Somebody licks you right there. Oh, just drives you crazy. You don't find that out until you spend time exploring somebody's body. What's it feel like if I do this right here? Oh, that's good. Oh, that's not good. Okay, well, I won't do that anymore. Right? That's how you learn. And while I'm just in general talking about not keeping, trying to keep sex from becoming boring, so it's not monotonous, um, I briefly want to mention uh, controlled substances. And what I mean is, let's talk about alcohol first. And I have to talk about it from the female perspective and the male perspective. So, first of all, right off the bat, alcohol is a depressant. The reason you feel when you first start getting intoxicated all loose and free and wild and crazy is because your brain works on an inhibitory system. So the brakes are kind of on in your brain, and alcohol, because it's a depressant, takes the brakes off. And so temporarily, it feels like, oh, I'm wild and free. Those are the early stages of intoxication. But if you continue with alcohol, it's a depressant and it numbs things. Um, when I was young, started out with alcohol, and occasionally we would drink, and didn't matter. I was having great sex, and I didn't notice it a whole lot at the time. Then I discovered late in life, thank goodness, or I would have never been as productive and accomplished as many things as I have done in my life. Then I discovered weed. And I personally love sex on weed because when I smoke weed, for me, and it's different with everybody, it just makes whatever I'm doing, eating, dancing, drinking, having sex, it just makes it better. So, great sex for me on weed is even better. But that's because it makes everything feel better to me. And then I remember after I discovered how I felt having sex on weed, I went back and just tried alcohol, not alcohol and weed together, just alcohol. And I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. I mean, I could just slap my clitoris and go, dude, it's numb. It's just totally, it's deadened. That's what alcohol does. It numbs you, it deadens you. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of sex on alcohol for that very reason. Now, for men, this is some of the reason they insist that using alcohol for sex is better for them because it does numb things. It's called whiskey dick. And the guys will talk about, I had whiskey dick because it's numb and they're experiencing less sensation, they can last longer. So they're using alcohol to last longer. I can give you a lot of other techniques that are better without having to numb yourself. For one, the best one, I think, especially when you're young, is I would just say, just go ahead and come. It doesn't matter. It's been a minute and a half. Go ahead and come. Who cares? Because then we can start, we'll give you a break, and then we can start playing again. And guess what? The second time, you're going to last longer. You just do. It may even take a little longer for you to get an erection, a good hard erection. That's okay. That's longer we can fool around and play. Most women don't object to that. So that's to me, that's the best way. They're like, oh no, I need to be drunk so I have whiskey dick and I can last a long time. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but I've had sex with drunks and it's not that great. And so why don't we try something else? Why don't we try just one, get into your head more and think about your partner focusing on your partner and that kind of stuff, that'll slow you down a little bit. But just go ahead and come the first time. And then we can slowly build up to the second one, right? That's a great way to do it without numbing yourself. So that would be one of my recommendations. But anyway, so sex starts to get a little boring, and people say, oh, we should have a threesome, or maybe we should try swinging, or maybe we should do something kinky. Let's explore a kinky side. Those are all, can be all really fun things to do to keep it from being boring. They all have some level of risk, which, by the way, is part of the reason for many people they're a turn on, is because there's some level of risk. So I had a friend in college, and because people, again, from a very early age, from high school, I'm trying to think, actually elementary school, kids were asking me questions about sex. And I was always trying to find the most accurate, correct information, always. So in college, and I didn't get to go to college until late in life because I did get pregnant at 16. But anyway, that's a different story. So I had a friend in undergraduate, and we were talking one day, and her husband was in the military. And she said she had married her high school sweetheart, which I always warn people about. That rarely works. It's just not a good idea. You need to have dated several people, have several kind of relationships before you settle into a long-term committed relationship. That's the only way. That's why the most successful relationships I've seen were people who got together in their 40s. They'd already been married, they'd already had kids, they knew who they were finally. Those tend to be the most successful relationships. But anyway, she married her high school sweetheart. They'd been together forever, and which meant, translation, sex was getting boring. Her husband asked her to have sex with other men. He was in the military, so occasionally he'd have to leave, go overseas and do stuff. But he would ask her, he told her he wanted her to have sex with other men. And I said, okay, I'm in. And what do you ask? Well, we wanted your advice on how to do it and blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay. I said, first, let's talk about the risk. And I never got to talk to her husband directly. I wish I had. So I was just telling her, and she was supposed to be conveying it to him. And I said, let's talk about the risk. What are the risks? The risks are that you're going to start having sex with somebody else and you're going to like them better and you're going to end up leaving your husband. So he needs to be aware that while this may be his kink and he may be excited about you doing it, she didn't have to record it. He didn't want to watch it. He didn't have to hear it. He didn't have to even be around. He just wanted her to do it and then tell him about it later. And I even explored, is he using that as an excuse because he wants to be with other people? Nope. He just wanted her to have sex with other people. That was his kink. That was his thing. That really, really turned him on. So I said, okay. So I said, what are you looking for? She kind of told me, I don't know if I've told you before. I've always said my favorite job in the world would have been to be a whorehouse madam. I would have loved that because, one, I would have taken really good care of my women. They would have been treated nicely. Would have only been the women who wanted to do it, enjoyed doing it, got paid well for doing it, and they would have been protected. But anyway, I love hooking people up. So I found her a guy that I had been with, and I said, you're going to really like this guy. He's married, but he's in an open relationship, so you don't have to worry about him wanting a relationship with you. And his wife is much older than him, and she's totally okay with him having sex with other people. So I hooked them up, and it just worked great for them in the beginning because he was getting turned on. She was having sex with other people. She was having fun. And as I had explained to them, yeah, she decided, why am I just with this one guy? Our sex is boring. There's all these other men out there. And she started doing what um, what she should have done when she was much younger. And she ended up leaving him, divorcing him, leaving her son behind, and moved to another country. I just felt sorry for her son because he wasn't even 18 when she took off. And I'm sure he's never quite forgiven her for that. So we're just about out of time now, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here. This is part one. Part two, I'm going to go ahead and record today and put it out there. So here's to masturbation and safer sex. I'll see you in the next, I won't see you. You'll hear me in the next podcast.